where we actually do some of the unit design work, or sort of put you through the experience that a lot of these international teachers go through. And then when we come out of that process, we're going to open it up just to a little bit of discussions about what that means for implications for teacher training programs, and sort of just see if there are any questions for you, but also just sort of open it up to, if this is what the tier 1 international schools are doing in my context, how can we trade notes and how can we share ideas, with what's going on in your programs. So Shannon, are we waiting for a few more people, or
no, this is good. This is good.
Awesome. Well, then on that note, I will jump straight in and I will share my screen, which I should have access to do.
You're a co-host.
Perfect. All right. And is everybody able to see that? Great.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So my name is Aaron Moniz, and I am one of the co-founders of an organization called Inspire Citizens. What we do is we work with schools, mostly international schools, but sometimes also local schools in the States and Canada. And basically what we do is we help to create schools as centers for sustainability education, global citizenship or global competence education, right? And we try and use curriculum to be able to take action for collective well-being or sustainability. And so most of our schools are inquiry-based schools. Some of them are Common Core, some of them are C3, some of them are MYP schools, some of them are international primary curriculum schools. But regardless of the curriculum structure, we take the existing programs and we slightly adapt them so that students are becoming global citizens through action, right? And we have a few programs or a few ways that we do that, right? Not every school either has the budget or has the desire or has the mission statement, to support all of the work that we do. So there are a few different ways that we work with schools. One, I'll talk about it in a second, is the Global Impact Schools Self-Study. Another is our student leadership programs. Another one is our civic action through media programs. Another is our online master teacher endorsement that we have for in-service teachers. And another one is what we're going to go through today, which is the empathy to impact curriculum design cycle. All right. So we have a few other members. Kavita Tana is our sort of lead facilitator. Steve Sostak is my other co-founder and co-director of Inspire Citizens, and Shannon knows him well also. And, of course, there's me. But I'll talk first of all about Global Impact Schools Self-Study and what that means for schools. So right now, you have all these different school improvement plans like the WASC accreditation or the NEASC accreditation, and they're really helping schools to figure out what are their areas for improvement. But there are no self-study or accreditation schools that are specifically tailored to global competence education, right? And so what that means is if you're a school and in your mission statement, it says we create global citizens or we create, active citizens that care about sustainability, the main question would be, well, what are your systems for doing so? And pretty much very few international schools in the world actually have an answer for that. They say, oh, well, we do this service learning project, or a couple times a year we go to Cambodia to help build houses. Right? But we ask them systemically, is that creating global citizens? Do you have the systems in place in your schools to make sure that every student that walks out of, your school through the span of their educational life there, are they truly becoming global citizens? And so we help them to develop missions and visions around global and intercultural competence. We help them to set up professional learning systems and implementation approaches so that we build capacity and every single teacher at the school gets the professional development that they need to be able to deliver this type of curriculum. We design the curriculum at the school. We design student leadership programs. We design student competency and action research programs. We help to design collective well-being programs and sustainability programs, all underneath that initial mission and vision. So once you have that defined and you have a system for how it is that you are going to turn those into learning outcomes, then those outcomes then inform everything that you do as a school-wide approach. And so, for example, the self-study that we published, an example is this pathway where we're talking about best practices in professional learning. And so it gives schools opportunities to say, well, am I doing this? Do I have this? What evidence do I have of this? And what might be my next steps if I were trying to move forward according to this self-study? So a lot of our work stems from that. And the reason why we created these particular design principles for professional or effective professional learning is we got a chance to work with Dr. Kevin Mattingly from Columbia Teachers College. And we spent 4 days in a hotel, basically pulling apart all of the best practice research or all the research on what is best practice professional learning. And we turned that into design principles. And these principles inform basically everything we do with schools. Because when we started, we were just doing curriculum design. And then afterwards, we realized, well, if 10% of your teachers got the PD and 2% of them actually implement, right, then you basically have maybe 1% of your student population that's actually being affected by this type of PD. And we need to look at whole school implementation programs because that's what's going to create transformative change. And so right now, actually, I'm based in Seoul. And one of the schools that I'm working with here, Seoul Foreign School, it's been around since 1912, and it's one of the oldest international schools in this part of the world. And they have me on site for 100 days a year as a consultant. And so every day I'm working with the board members, working with community stakeholders, designing outcomes that are based on their mission. And then from there, I work with curriculum coordinators, principals, so that they're able to then work with their staff to design units, do action research, collect evidence on student outcomes, so that every month when we meet, they know if they are making global citizens because they have the evidence and they have 425 staff members who are trying to do it on a daily basis. And so that's a lot of the work that we do. For those that are not able to who don't have schools that want to go with that large or that more in-depth approach, we have an online master teacher endorsement. And so it's not affiliated with any particular university because all the universities we were speaking to were impacted by COVID when the pandemic hit. And so we decided to just launch it independently. And it's for in-service teachers to get resources and training on how to do global citizenship education, sustainability education. And then it provides them online coaching, Socratic seminars on the weekend. And so we have about 50 people currently in our first cohort, and they're educators from Malawi, Nigeria, KL. We've got people from Shanghai and people from the US, and all these different teachers are working together for professional development to try and figure out how they can do global citizenship education in their context. And quickly, we also help schools to design student leadership programs, right? And this doesn't, sometimes we just work with launching it with students and creating the tools. Sometimes we embed it into curriculum, but sometimes we actually design leadership programs by which students can create interactive portfolios that link to their graduate profile, so that when they actually apply to universities, the university can click on their profile and watch them, watch the evidence that they've actually provided of them using these leadership skills in context to take action in their communities. And there's a few schools that have really taken this on, and they've done it in conjunction with the Mastery Transcript Consortium. And so it's some exciting work that we do there. And finally, a fun project that we work on is we have a media program, right? And we help schools, especially now, if you can't go out in your community to take action, right? Well, what are you going to do? Well, we have a program called Global Youth Media, and it's globalyouthmedia.org. And there are different ways that students can authentically publish and create media, podcasting, videos, and share it with other students around the world, where they're taking issues that exist in their community or exploring people who are tackling issues in their community, or just telling stories about culture, right? And then they produce media, put it on this platform, and are able to share and engage with other students around the world. And that's really been picking up recently, just because of the virtual learning and isolation sort of practices, or virtual learning things that are happening at many schools. So Inspire Citizens, long story short, whole school implementation, curriculum design, online master teacher endorsement, student leadership programs. But really what we're going to talk about today is the empathy to impact curriculum approach. And what that entails is that it's basically it's your project cycle, it's a service learning cycle, right? It's an inquiry cycle. Every school uses at least one of those, right? Or some schools are inquiry-based schools, and they also want to try and do service learning, or they want to try and do action, right? But they don't know how to combine their approaches. So when we work with schools, we just say, yes, we know you want to do inquiry. Yes, we know that you want to take action. Let's simplify it for you. We're going to break this project cycle into 4 parts. 1, identify what it is that you care about. Identify what it is that are the local issues, or local or global issues in your community that you want to spark inquiry, that you want kids to care about so much that they then want to tune in and find out, and they want to be able to read and research and learn so that they can. Second part of the cycle is asking, how is it that we get our students to become more deeply aware? Once they care about something and you launch that inquiry through the provocations about something that matters, how are we then designing lessons to make sure that students are becoming more aware of that issue, and throughout the process, developing empathy, intercultural competence, and using civic literacies? Then when we do our design, or within the unit design protocol, we then hone in on what are the standards that you have to teach? What are the transdisciplinary skills that you have to teach within your unit? And also, if you have a competency set, if you use 21st century learning, if you are, if you have ISTE or technology standards that you need to embed into your curriculum, what are they? And then how can we leverage those so that students are using them to take action, right? To take impactful action. And what is impactful action? Because from a teacher perspective and from a curriculum design perspective, if we can identify a why and a what now, and then we fill in between the why and the what now with the great curriculum and pedagogy that every teacher needs, that's how we create global citizens. And if we can do that so that students have an opportunity to care, use curriculum to take action from the time that they're young to the time that they graduate, then those are the kind of people that we want in the world. And today, we're going to basically go through a protocol that we use with teachers to do that same thing. And these are just sort of other visual representations of the same thing with our key questions in there. So to start us off, I'll give you an example of a school, middle school. They did an interdisciplinary unit where they were focusing, it was between design and math, right? And so they wanted to create a tiny house expo to explore sustainable living and how it is that we can reduce our carbon footprint by designing more sustainable ways to live. And so for them, they identified that they cared about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that are associated with climate action, right? Responsible production and consumption. And they basically said that if we can take better care of our environment through housing, then we can help the United Nations to do better things for climate and help our community to understand more responsible production and consumption. In order to become more aware of that, they used different types of observational protocols in order to analyze the space and the energy usage within their school building and within their the neighborhood. Right. They also brought in sustainable architects that they were able to interview. Right. And then they talked about what is sustainable architecture and how does that actually benefit the world. Right. They also were looking at different types of media and documentaries on, tiny homes and what are the benefits of tiny homes and the impact that that has on the environment. Right. And then they were also doing surveys within their community to see if people even knew that, housing and sustainable living had an impact on climate. And then so by them, the design process or the design curriculum requires that you do these things, right? The math program that they were, the math standards that they were using required that they did these things, but we added a greater why to it. And so the skills that they actually had to apply within this project was they needed to use SketchUp and Tinkercad and learn how to use 3D printing software for their design class. But then they had to do volume and area and surface area. And they had to combine those two things together in an interdisciplinary fashion in order to create a pitch. And then once they actually designed their sustainable houses and they were able to take basically the layout of their school and make it more sustainable and reduce the climate impact that they were having, they hosted a future housing exhibition or innovation fair. And their action was they invited people in the community to come in and view their housing prototypes or their tiny houses, right? And then while the people were coming to look at their tiny houses, they were explaining, informing, and advocating for how it is that people could actually change their own lifestyles to positively impact climate action, right? And so that could have been do these worksheets on volume and area, or here is your design class, make a birdhouse, right? But instead they took those same standards, they linked it to something that really matters. They used a few other civic literacies to become more aware of the issue. They applied their standards and they made sure that it was all moving towards action so that other people within the community were learning from them. And that's how this school helped to meet their mission statement of, it says that they inspire, inform, create another verb so that they can support sustainable development and the good of all. And that's their mission statement. So as many units as possible of the school try and take action for sustainability. And, so we are going to go through something similar. All right, we're going to focus on similar protocol that we use when we work with teachers. And so I'm going to get you to say, right, what do I care about in the world? And how can I connect that to something that I might teach, right? Or you're thinking about, you know what, as a teacher, right? I really wish that I could design a unit around this, or I think that my students would really, dive into inquiry, and I would really be able to increase engagement with my students if I framed a unit around this. All right. And the care section of our empathy to impact approach, usually we explore issues related to collective well-being. We explore social justice standards and issues of identity, diversity, justice, or action, or we explore the Sustainable Development Goals, and which are the United Nations path towards sustainability and their specific targets. So, and as you can see, we sometimes even do it with 4 subjects worth of interdisciplinary integration, and it can be used in many different contexts. So I'm going to ask you to say, right, what's your why? What do you guys care about? And how could we potentially turn that into a unit design? And so we're going to focus on the Sustainable Development Goals as our why. And as you can see, what the students are doing here in the picture is they identify a sustainable development goal. They think about a target that might really relate to something that they're learning. And then underneath it, they're able to then design inquiry questions to say, if I want to know more about this, I'm going to frame my inquiry around these questions, and then I'm going to find out my resources, right? Or from a teacher perspective, you can do the same. If you're teaching this subject and you find that this sustainable development goal or these targets might really match well to a unit, you can then frame your inquiry questions, or you can frame your concepts accordingly so that you can then do the lesson planning and unit design from that point. So I'm going to give you a website, which is globalgoals.org. I will put it into the chat momentarily, or you can jump there. But when you get to it, you'll see that you will click on one of the goals. It'll bring you to this page. And then when you scroll down, it'll describe the sustainable development goal. And then it'll bring you to a part where you can actually look at the targets underneath each one of the sustainable development goals. All right. And so I'm going to ask you to pick a target. And we've got a Padlet in there. And so I'm going to ask you to go to globalgoals.org, browse the SDG and the targets, and choose one that you connect with. Open the Padlet, and I'll put the link in the chat. And then write the SDG target and an inquiry question related to that. And as an exemplar, I have already put one on and I've reiterated the task on the Padlet, but we want to see that you are, oh, sorry, I'm sharing the wrong one right now. If you'll see that there's an exemplar here for you, and you pick the target and then create some inquiry question that you think would be something that would drive student learning going forward. Okay. So your current, I will drop globalgoals.org and the Padlet link into the chat, and I'll give you a few minutes to explore and then start writing within the Padlet. Okay, and I'll start with global goals. All right. Has everyone received the first link?
Yes, I've received it. Thank you.
Great. And then once you have found your global goal and target, or your sustainable development goal and target, then I would invite you to go into the Padlet and press the little plus button in the corner and follow the exemplar, follow the instructions for part 1. Don't worry about part 2 yet. We'll get there. Let's just say, let's give you about 10 minutes right now to browse and make a post. Thank you for asking the question.
So Aaron, I'm looking at posting something on that second link and it says I'm under number 1 and it says, and write it in the title.
Yeah, so you see the little plus button in the corner? I will show, when you go onto the Padlet, does it give you a plus button in the corner?
Which corner?
So are you seeing my screen right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you see this little button in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a plus.
Oh, down there. Uh-huh.
Yep, that'll allow you to add a post and you can write in the title.
Great.
And if I changed the sharing settings so that everyone should be able to access it, but if anyone is not, please let me know and I can rectify that ASAP. I love how one of the posts coming up has the language of the target and the target number. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so if I were to do this, and as you guys are reading, if you wanted to take this through a subject teacher lens, you could also try and look at some that might be more pertinent to the subject area that you teach. So for example, if you teach sciences and you know that teachers oftentimes have to look at energy resources, there's some great targets that talk about energy efficiency, renewable energies, or sorry, renewable energy sources, right? There's also a lot of really good ones related to the sciences when you go to life on land and climate action. Or if you teach history or social studies, right? There's a lot on, particularly on reduced inequalities. There's a lot about governance, right? There's a lot of issues about gender equality and quality education, or if you teach argumentative writing or informational writing, right? You could explore any of these types of topics within a humanities lens. If you teach math, again, energy audits are great. If you're looking at rates and ratios and you're looking at independent and dependent variables or constant of variation in slope, you can look at comparative gender or inequality issues. You can look at especially responsible production and consumption when you're looking at waste audits. And you're looking at impacts of choices. All right, and so right now I see that there's about 10, there are 9 responses. And many of you have chosen the target. And I would invite you to try and think of an inquiry question. And it could be either something that you're interested in or something that you think might positively frame inquiry for students. It's up to you to decide. How can international schools be more inclusive? All right, we've got a few investigations into inclusion in schools. We'll give you guys about 2 more minutes here. I love how here it says, how can students find reliable sources regarding climate change? Absolutely. And even then, if they can find the sources and put them in a paper, that's great. If they can find the sources and put them in a paper and authentically share them with 100 people within their community so that the people in the community can now potentially change their practices based on those sources that they found, it's now an action project that's linked to the writing assignment. I love that target 5.6. All right, how can we teach our students to talk about issues regarding issues that can be difficult, taboo, or interwoven with religion, right? And even then, you know, imagine you are a social studies teacher and you wanted to, you know, design a unit that's just around perspectives of X, right? And you're teaching intercultural competence by allowing your students to explore the fact that different people, different backgrounds, different religious groups, whatever, right, have different perspectives. And if you did it in an informational writing sense, right, then you are sharing different perspectives and informing yourself while potentially using your writing to inform others. And you're not necessarily you're not telling students what to think. You're not imposing a particular Western-centric view or a particular bias on them. You can be using informational writing to objectively explore multiple perspectives and worldviews. Right? And so I love, that's a great post. Okay, so I'm going to jump back now because I feel that most people have had adequate time to contribute. And forgive me, see Shen's. Oh, hi, Nico. All right. So just like you did, right? We work with administrators, curriculum coordinators to do the same thing. Right here, this is Singapore American School. It's one of the biggest international schools in the world and is a really well-renowned school. And this is their middle school principal, a few of the teachers and curriculum coordinators now doing a scope and sequence of their entire middle school social studies. Oh, and it's actually their whole scope and sequence: math, social studies, English, and well, humanities, right? And they're saying, well, what are the unit themes and what is a potential inquiry question that could frame inquiry? And which SDGs do we have units that link to naturally? And then later we got them to think about potential actions. And just in that, 1 hour, 90-minute session that they were doing, they already were looking at the potential for planning 35 plus sustainability based action units that were linked to their curriculum across the whole scope and sequence of the school. And as you can see, the small little, the little teaser that we just put you through is sometimes the same experience that students have when they're like, oh man, I didn't know that, you could do this with sustainable energy. Like, I wonder if, right? Or else when you're working with teachers, the same thing where it's like, oh, wow, you're right. Like, I have a science unit that's about this, and I wonder how we could, right? Or you even use these same targets with administrators and curriculum coordinators, and they say, how could we use these targets to impact and positively benefit our own school or our own community? Let's attach those to our existing scope and sequence. And then it ends up in the students taking action. So right now, if we are talking about making sure that there's a why behind our curriculum, we're going to then jump ahead just because we don't have a whole lot of time today. And we're going to look at the what now, right? So many schools that we work with, right? They say they create global citizens, and then they make students write essays that get marked by a teacher and thrown in the garbage when they're done. When really they could be taking that learning opportunity, linking it to something that actually matters in the world, and using that same process in order to do X. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what is an impact project, what are ways that we could do impact projects, and then once we've had our why and our what now identified, that's when we'd basically put that at the top of the unit planner. We'd come up with our concepts and we'd come up with our inquiry questions, and then we would go into unit design. But we're going to do our why and our what now today. So when we talk about impact and the empathy to impact approach, what we do is we help people to understand that learning should end in youth participatory action. Learning should end in a doing. Learning should end in an authentic sharing of learning and application of the skills that they're learning, right? And there's a couple of simple ways that we can do that. If you already have to do argumentative writing, let's think about a why and a what now that you could attach to it. If you already have to teach these specific standards in math, let's think about a why and a what now to attach to that. And so we're going to look at a how of action, and we're going to look at a for who of action, and we're going to make sure that it links to the why that you identified at the beginning. And in the empathy to impact approach, this is the, like we said, the impact style. So what type of action are we going to be taking, and how is it that we're going to impact change in our community? So a very simple resource is this one. We give it to teachers as a menu. So well, actually, a lot of times we give it to students as a menu. Right? This is linked to the PYP expectations for what is action. This is linked to the MYP and IB program, service learning or services action programs, right? This is linked to what the C3 standards say as action. But really, if you can participate in something, you can advocate for something, you can design something that creates change, if you can authentically publish so that other people can hear it, right? If you can learn and then adapt your own lifestyle, right? And then either just have self as action or work on it with your family members, right? If you can teach somebody else or run a workshop, right? Or maybe you just want to creatively express as your output. But all of these are ways that, that students can take action. And either we as teachers, right, or teachers of teachers, can be thinking of a guided inquiry where we're guiding people towards a particular action that we want to be the output of a unit, or we can have a few potential outputs and then give students the menu so that when they get to the end of the actual project, they get to choose what type of action they think is going to have the biggest impact. But not only do we say what kind of action, we get students and or teachers to then figure out, well, who? Right? So if you are talking about responsible production and consumption, right? And you want to be able to do a lifestyle change, or you want people to participate. Well, who am I going to target as my recipient of action? Is it going to be me and my family? Right? Am I a grade 1 student that's looking at, reusable resources, and I want to use myself as action, and then our family is going to do a little action challenge, and that's how I'm going to become a sustainable global citizen? Right? If I am looking at some of these bigger questions, is there, for example, community members who I might want to participate in something to make our school more inclusive, right? Maybe there is an NGO that works with, gender equality within my community, and they require support. And so I am going to do X to help their initiatives or publish about their initiatives as my way of taking action. Maybe I really care about climate change, and I care about, photosynthesis and my science standards. And the recipient of my action is actually going to be a public space. And I want to try and help create that vertical garden, right? Or I want to create that aquaponic system outside so that I'm working on carbon reclamation and trying to actually take action by creating more green spaces, right? By choosing what kind of action you want to do, and then who the recipient of that action is, right? That's how we can actually design impact projects, and we can take impactful action. So I'm going to give you another few minutes again to go back to the actual Padlet. And then as you see, the instructions for part 2 are choose a type of action. And the type of action that you choose, oh, it's over here. Choose a type of action. You can write it just underneath where you wrote your inquiry question, like it shows in the exemplar here. And if you wanted to look at the which type of action and for who, those resources are shared right here. So your instructions will be to go back to your post. And then if you are thinking about this as an inquiry question, what type of action could somebody take? right? And who would be a recipient of that if you, or who would be the target of that action if you wanted that to actually happen. Okay. So go back to your posts within the Padlet, and I'll give you another few minutes just to type in some ideas about action and for who. And again, the resources are right here at the top of the Padlet, part 2A and part 2B, if you would like. I like this one. Prepare a debate, right, for peer student teachers. All right. We actually, I'm working with a neonative Mandarin class, and they are doing a project right now called Debate for Impact. And they're using argumentative writing to create debates. But the whole point about Debate for Impact is that not only are they're going to go from adversaries to allies. And after listening to both sides of the debates, the teams are going to come together to design action plans, right? And while they're doing the debates, they're going to be recording them so that they can share them with the community. And they're going to be inviting people to be present at the debates. And then the action plans that they design afterwards will be shared with everybody who saw it online and everybody that visited in person. So it takes that argumentative writing and the language development from Mandarin class and then turns it into an impact project that, 200 people get to consider the implications of what their debates actually produced. All right, so I love that one. I love, again, right, organize a symposium, lectures and workshops, right? And that one can be done, like you said, from an adult perspective, but also students can do that as well. They could have their own workshops, or their own exhibitions in order to share with others. Running workshops, again, for local residents. Teach in order to understand the importance for family and friends, right? Because then again, it's the application and it's the transfer of the skills that they need in order to do that skill, and not just existing in the paper that gets marked by the teacher and thrown in the garbage. I love that one. Interviewing, right? Specific locals so that they can then figure out, vulnerable communities, right? And even if we just as students interviewed the people and we took those and we sent them to Congress, if we got them involved or got them into the hands of local, political leaders within our community, that would be a great action project. Using the power of language to persuade. I love that. And target 12.6, there's really good resources. One is called the UN Global Compact, and another one is called B Corps, and they actually have sustainability reporting practices. And a lot of times we break them apart with schools, and then students then use them to lobby to the operations people that run the actual building to try and see if they can make the building more sustainable and use sustainability reporting practices within their own organization. So again, I love everything that you guys are coming up with here in terms of actions and in terms of inquiry questions. So it looks like most people have had a chance to respond. And I also don't want to take up all of your time, but one thing that I want to do, if I can just pause you for a moment, is I want to stop and recognize you, right? Because you went through the protocol that right now about 12,000 international teachers at tier 1 international schools have also gone through. Right? The next step then for these international teachers would then be to say, okay, well, what is my subject area and the standards that I have to teach? How do I use that to design essential, my essential understand, or that my essential questions and my enduring understandings, or if you're concept based, how do I then create my concepts and then my inquiry questions, right? And then they go into embedded formative assessment, backwards planning from this output that you have designed as action. And then they scope and sequence them from grade 1 to grade 12. And this process that you just went through is the process that many of our partner schools and many of the teachers that we've been working with over the last few years have gone through, because they believe that by adding a why and a what now, or by using curriculum to link to something that they care about and using it to go towards action, right, is the way that they're going to be able to create global citizens, and they're going to be able to impact sustainability through the use of curriculum. And I, again, invite you to look at this Padlet, but I kind of want to just give us a few minutes at the end, right, to just say, from what you see here on the Padlet, from the experience that you went through just sort of this idea of empathy to impact, right? What do you think the implications of these ideas are for concept-based inquiry and impactful action? And I want to open it up to you guys to just share your thoughts either in the chat or to just share your thoughts, verbally as we sort of close and debrief. And I'm going to, if we don't have any takers, I might pick on some people here.
I'll just say something real quick.
Sure.
don't know if you can see me. Yeah, I find this mind-blowing in a way. I have the thought, can we do this? Are we allowed? Are we allowed to do this? It's incredible. I mean, it seems strangely revolutionary to think of linking curriculum to actual community action. I think this is fabulous. And if this is something that we are able to use to base a lot of our curriculum choices on, and maybe, we start small with little projects. I have a lot of ideas suddenly for our English program on where we can integrate even small community projects in looking at these sustainability goals. So I'm quite inspired by today. So thank you.
Yes, maybe I can add something, because we're teaching democratic citizenship, and one of the discussions is that it should not be taught as a separate subject, but within all subjects. And I see a lot of opportunities. I share how do you mean? And the opinion of Christina that really opens some doors, and I would really like it to have, for example, every year a different impact or a different goal or whatever, and it leads up to a lot. And thank you. It is really, really inspiring. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to jump in as well. So I've been a teacher in MYP also for a long time, for 7 years. And in my school, we did try to work a little bit like that. And I think it would be great if in ITESS, so training teachers, we would do it, because afterwards, that when they would go to schools, they would have gone through the process themselves. So I think that's just the best training for them, to do it and then to go there, and they would understand so much quicker than I did when I arrived in my school with the IB program. I loved it, but I was a bit, that's so different from what I'm used to do. So if we could do it in ITESS, I think that would be fantastic for them.
So I'm so excited that you all are finding enthusiasm in this. We had Dr. Miguel Barker shared this morning, Aaron, and he's in Oman. And the last few years, he's tried to give a structure to his school to give teachers the time to work in this way. And another connection I make is that the founder of our program, his name is Peter Elting. And he and I had a long conversation, I think, that really inspired me to reaching out to you. Because he's the founder of the program, or kind of an original visionary, right? And when I shared with him about this idea of, I wish that our students would really inspire, ignite the application of a project like this when they go into their partner schools. And I shared a little bit about the work that I'd seen you do, that we had done in my previous school. And I would just say, so I think as a teacher education program, we really have a great capacity or potential to really an exponential impact on this whole idea. And I'd say the other thing that came up in your presentation today, I was thinking about, it's easy to complain, but complaining is not empowering. And so when we look at our students, and we're caught in this situation right now where things are changing, they can't do their in-face practicum, but there's actually maybe a lot that they could do with something like this. So I shared, for instance, we have a link with CNN to do My Freedom Day. And so maybe there's a project that we could actually do in the next couple weeks to a month that would be an experiment with this, because basically our curriculum has been put on hold because of COVID. So we might actually be able to experiment with something very soon. Anyway, this is new for some of us, and I was wondering if you would share a little bit. You'd said, how many schools are you working with, and for how long has this been going on in your experience?
Well, again, before I speak to that, I just want to say thank you guys again. thank you for your contributions, thank you for all the work that you put into considering these concepts, and also just the responses that you guys offered were very inspiring, because we literally quit our jobs at school so that we could start a consulting platform so we could work with as many people as possible, because we believe in this. And as a mission-driven organization, we spend every day trying to get as many people as possible to try and do this, because we believe wholeheartedly that taking action on these types of global issues like sustainability and social justice is not necessarily just for the government, sectors to be able to do. If we can optimize existing systems, like just look at our school systems, right? How many millions of children are going to school right now? And if we can take simple approaches and apply it to the skills that they already need, well, then we can take action while also getting kids to actually care about school and increasing engagement, right? And so right now we have 35 schools that we work with, 35 international schools. We're only a 3.5 person organization, so that's about as much as we can do with the human power that we have. And yeah, we've worked with about 12,000 teachers in the last 3 years. And we've got over 100,000 different students that we've had either direct contact with or curriculum design contact with. And so if you guys ever have questions where you're like, hey, I need a unit for grade 1, right? Or I need a unit for science, or I need a unit for grade 12 chemistry, reach out to us, because we are creating these every day.
Do you
Right?
have a library, Erin? Sorry to interrupt.
We most of the intellectual property that we create with schools have to be kept within the school, but we have the liberty to share particular resources. So, and
Okay.
we do have on our website now, we're starting to compile vignettes section. And so the vignettes go through all the different experiences that schools have.
Okay.
So
And
Erin,
so,
And Aaron, is it also possible to contact you or maybe invite you to do something with our first year students for democratic citizenship, for example?
would love to.
Okay,
Would
great.
be
Thank
my
you.
pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
so
Well,
Erin, to follow up on that, how much in advance do you need to know if we'd like to invite you to come do, say, a couple lessons, an intensive with our students, but then we also want to do a workshop with you on curriculum, similar to the work, that slide that you have, where we do transdisciplinary work or we do curriculum review. But what kind of timeline what kind of advanced communication do you do? Can we have you in the spring, for instance?
If Korea gets on the vaccine plan, then potentially spring is a possibility. But also most of our contracts for next year will be locked in by the end of February. So yes, I know. So if you are considering, just think about that. But I would absolutely love to work with you guys in any form, right? Especially if it's working with your students, that would be great. And then also if there was a potential for us to be looking at, our curriculum and how we're preparing prospective teachers, that would be really exciting as well. We've done some work with a few universities before, including the University of Northern Carolina in Wilmington. And we put together, we helped them to use this actually to change part of their teacher training program based on the EdTPA. And so because their teacher training program is based on planning, instruction, and assessment, and all those core parts that go into it, we just added the top 2 sections to their teacher training program to say, well, make sure you have purpose and action in there. Otherwise, the planning, instruction, and assessment, is not being leveled up. And just by literally adding that little part to their teacher training program, it changed their teacher prep program.
So Erin, just thank you so much for this inspiring time today. We get to meet with you tomorrow morning, everyone. So we're looking forward to that. It's a different topic. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing tomorrow before we say goodbye?
Yes. Inspire Citizens, my main, the organization that I co-founded is more about global citizenship and sustainability education. But my background and specialization in the last 10 years has been working with special needs students and empowering language learners. And what we're going to be doing is looking at what protocols international schools use to do embedded language development into curriculum. And so we're going to pull apart a couple of resources. We're going to do a little bit more hands-on work, even more so than today. And we're just going to say, if I am a teacher, that's graduating from ITESS, and I'm going to go to the International School of Beijing, right? This is what they're going to expect me to do, right? And that's just, we're going to go through that experience. And
right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron, so much. Really, thanks for being up so late and really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Thank you guys again. You've been fantastic, and I look forward to talking to you again. And if you are interested, you can check out inspirecitizens.org. Most of our resources are open source and descriptions, and you can request the publication of the self-study, and then you can find all of our contact information as well. So just inspire, not inspired citizens. We're not that arrogant. I'm just kidding. But yeah, inspire citizens like the verb.org. So,
Great.
all right.
Thank you.
very much.
Amazing
Have a
work.
wonderful evening,
Amazing
everybody.
work.
See
Thank
you
you,
soon.
Aaron. See you. Bye.
All right. Bye.